I like to do this thing where before I watch a video, if I know there's going to be some type of, not necessarily debate per se, but disagreement about a subject uh, between two people, I like to do this thing where I try to guess who I think I'm going to agree with before I watch the video. That's just something that I do. I'm just weird like that. But I made an assumption before I watched this video of who I thought I would agree with, and I was wrong. And I'm usually not wrong when I play this game. I actually thought that I was probably going to agree more so with Briahna Joy Gray. Then I watched the video, and I've actually watched this video 3 times. And surprisingly, I actually found myself agreeing more with Kim. So this discussion is about Bernie Sanders' movement. Is Bernie Sanders going to run again? I don't think Bernie Sanders is going to run again. And to be honest with you guys, I think Bernie has passed his time, right? I think he had his moment. I think he had his moment in 2016. He had his moment in 2020. I think if Bernie were to run again, I think it would be embarrassing for him. I'm just going to be honest with you. I think his time has come and passed. So that being said, they're going to talk about that, and they're going to talk about the progressive movement and where it's going. So this is actually a pretty interesting discussion. But again, I was actually surprised that I found myself agreeing more with Kim than with Bree. So let's go into this video here. And here we go.
So options, I guess, The Rock to Bernie. Bernie, there's no way to say that he's too old to make another go of it because they're all too old.
Not what Dianne Feinstein thinking about.
Way too old, so he certainly could. The left, and I guess I'm curious for what you think about this, Briahna, but it seems to me as an outsider to the left that there's not a very deep bench. I mean, just for the Democrats in general, but also for the progressives, there's not a obvious successor to Bernie who has that kind of charisma and resonance. And it reminds me, as a libertarian, of the kind of Ron Paul phenomenon, which was so big throughout my college years and then into the start of my career. Ron Paul being this, chief animating figure among young, non-left-leaning people, and then and then after he was kind of done, there wasn't anybody else to step up. Or I mean, I guess there was Rand Paul, but he's more of a somewhat more mainstream Republican figure.
Yeah.
So I do want to chime in here really quick and just add, I don't really agree. This Robbie person, I don't know who he is. Okay, so I really feel like I agree with him on this point that Bernie didn't really have someone come behind him. Like he didn't have someone to pass the torch on to. That is something I will say because even when you go back to 2008, you look at Obama, right? He won in 2008, then he won in 2012. Obama was, well, this is how it was supposed to go. Obama was supposed to pass that mantle on to Hillary Clinton. And I think that was always the plan, to be honest with you. I think that was planned from the moment that he won in 2008. When he was going against Hillary and they saw Obama was taking the lead. I think the plan was Obama do your 2 terms and then pass it over to Hillary. Okay. I don't think Bernie had someone to pass it to. And some people say they think that should have been Nina Turner or was supposed to be Nina Turner. I don't know. That doesn't seem like what happened, though. So Bernie Sanders suspended his campaign 2020. And when he did that, he also left his movement. And I've talked about this before as well. What Bernie should have done is he should have continued his movement and he should have started a whole third party wave to counter this 2-party system. That's what Bernie Sanders should have done. But you never leave your movement, especially when he said he would still be out there in the streets with the people, even if he lost. Obviously, that did not happen. So I do agree with Robbie on this point that he didn't pass this on to anybody else, right? So let's go back into the conversation.
I think that's right. Look, there have been articles asking this question, most recently a couple about Marianne Williamson's prospective run and one about asking whether Ro Khanna was going to run. I asked Ro Khanna this question recently on my show. He said absolutely no to 2024, but there was some equivocation about 2028. And I think that part of the frustration with a lot of folks who could be in the position to be the next progressive leader is that they've been very visibly positioning themselves thusly. And because they've done so, they don't have that same sense of integrity that Bernie Sanders did as someone who worked for all those years kind of under the radar without these presidential ambitions. That seems to be the singular quality that's missing, that Bernie.
Okay. So this part, let's hear this part again. 1 second.
Prospective run and one about asking whether Ro Khanna was going to run. I asked Ro Khanna this question recently on my show. He said absolutely no to 2024, but there was some equivocation about 2028. And I think that part of the frustration with a lot of folks who could be in the position to be the next progressive leader is that they've been very visibly positioning themselves thusly. And because they've done so, they don't have that same sense of integrity that Bernie Sanders did as someone who worked for all those years kind of under the radar without these presidential ambitions. That seems to be the singular quality that's missing, that Bernie Sanders was this guy who really seemed to be in it for the right reasons. And most of the up and coming progressives, people like Pramila Jayapal and Ro Khanna, aren't perceived in that same light because it seems like they are jockeying hard right now for leadership positions within a Democratic Party establishment that is very.
Okay. So this part right here, Ro Khanna and Pramila Jayapal, like obviously, I mean, I've talked about them a lot. You guys know this. They're careerist. They're looking out for their careers. Yes, they are looking for these leadership positions, these committee assignments. Like that's what they're looking for. But there's a piece that's missing here, and this is something I've talked about often on the show with you guys. I don't hear more people talking about this. I think we also need to point out the fact that Ro Khanna and Pramila Jayapal also take corporate money. I feel like this is like the elephant in the room. And people aren't saying this. I feel like it's me and maybe other smaller channels, but I feel like people aren't really saying this. Ro Khanna takes money from Silicon Valley. His wife takes money from the military industrial complex. Hello. I laid out Pramila Jayapal's receipts for you a couple days ago on this show. They both take corporate money. They're still bought and paid for. And no one mentioned that. Like, I think this is the part for me where I feel like I know damn well I'm not the only one in this space that knows that. I know I'm not. And people who've been doing this longer than me, come on. So that's another big part of the problem is taking the corporate money. And I wish, so that's one part where I wish like Bree would have mentioned that. Why didn't she mention that? So that part to me, I just, nah. No, I mean, yeah, they're trying to go for these leadership positions. Yes, that is partially true, but they take corporate money. And that was a big thing, like with Bernie, a big thing with him was grassroots donations. Let me take some from a little bit, from unions, which he had mentioned that as well. But I think there's a big difference here. Pramila Jayapal taking money from Amazon. Bernie Sanders didn't take money from Amazon. So he was really willing to call them out. You see the difference when you're not taking money from these people? This is why Bernie Sanders could call out Amazon the way that he did. He could call out Walmart the way that he did. But Pramila Jayapal and Ro Khanna, they just, the money needs to be mentioned. I'm going to go back in.
Obviously hostile to progressive interests.
I mean, Robbie, I doubt you voted for Bernie
I did not.
first time.
No.
I would assume, Briahna, that you did. I know I did. So, would I vote for him again after voting for him the first time around? I'm not certain if I would or wouldn't. My only concern now with the progressive faction, and I used to call myself a progressive. I don't really know what to label myself now, is that I feel like the priorities have shifted. So there was a period of time where it was all about Medicare for all, getting money out of politics, reducing the defense the defense budget, which I know Bernie still screams about, many of these things. But I feel like the actual progressive base has shifted even Bernie's politics. When he really focused on economics mostly, now I feel like he's shifted a bit, and now he does get into that the culture war stuff that I think is actually toxic for the party. And I actually think that's why Bernie and Trump didn't do as well in this last election, was because both of them veered away from what made them popular, which was talking about the middle class, building up the middle class, and they instead kind of went into these more culture war issues that I think most Americans don't care about, unless you're on Twitter or something. So I don't know.
All right, let's talk about this for just a second, because this is one piece that I think some progressives, leftists, whatever people are calling themselves these days, don't want to admit. But listen to this. Whether you like Kim or not, she has a point about this. Listen to what she says here.
And Trump didn't do as well in this last election was because both of them veered away from what made them popular, which was talking about the middle class, building up the middle class, and they instead kind of went into these more culture war issues that I think most Americans don't care about, unless you're on Twitter or something. So I don't know. I mean, I just think that with Bernie, my worry is, okay, maybe I still agree with many of the things that he wants to put out there, but would he actually have any progress with those issues when so much of the base is no longer seemingly there with him on it?
Okay, let's talk about this really quick, what Kim mentioned about Bernie's 2016 campaign and his 2020 campaign, because this is not the first time I've heard this mentioned. Some of my friends that voted for Bernie Sanders in 2016 did not want to vote for him in 2020 because they felt exactly the same way what Kim just said. They felt that Bernie's 2016 campaign was more about the class issue. He focused more on economics. And back then, and I don't know if everyone remembers this, but back then, Bernie Sanders wasn't just calling out Amazon and Walmart. Bernie Sanders was calling out the banks. And when it came around for 2020, he wasn't talking about that much anymore. I noticed he didn't talk about the banks that much. He focused on Amazon, he focused on Walmart, but he was also focusing on the fact of, and I heard Bernie say this multiple times, and I was at the Bernie rally here in Boston. I have that vlog somewhere on my channel, like way, way, way back. But I have that whole speech like on Google Drive somewhere. But one of the things I remember he said was that he just constantly was repeating that we have to get this racist, sexist, president out. We can't leave Trump in. And I get it. But I think the problem that some of his 2016 supporters, like the ride or die Bernie people, had was they felt like he wasn't focusing as heavily on the class issue and the corruption the way that he did in 2016. That is something that even friends of mine said. So why is that? I think sometimes politicians tailor their campaign to the person that they're running against. And in 2016, Bernie Sanders was running against Hillary Clinton, right? Everybody knows the Clintons are corrupt. Hillary Clinton has a lot of corruption. So Bernie, it actually did him justice by focusing on that corruption and the class issue with Hillary Clinton, because that's all Hillary. Like, I'm sorry, but she's corrupt. It just is what it is. She's corrupt, right? In 2020, when he's running against Donald Trump, there was the whole, he's a sexist, he's a racist, he's a misogynist, we got to get him out. Yeah, I remember hearing that. But Trump was also corrupt. You see what I mean? Like, the class issue and the corruption also still applies to Donald Trump. So that was one of the things that I did notice. Like, even if you look at the people who were supporters in 2020, Bernie lost some of that lower class base. I don't say lower class, working class people and poor people. Bernie Sanders lost some of that support come 2020. You don't believe me? Go look at the numbers. I've looked at those numbers so many times. He lost some of that support. So And I don't know if some of it was just because people felt like, well, they didn't think that Bernie could beat Trump. But I'm talking about the people who supported him in 2016, and then come 2020, they decided not to. And there were those people. So I think if you look at both campaigns, 2016 and 2020, I think his 2016 campaign was stronger, right? That's just my opinion. I think his 2016 campaign was much stronger. Unfortunately, he didn't get as much publicity and attention for 2016 campaign. But if I were to compare the two, I think the 2016 campaign was his better campaign. Now, someone mentioned this in the chat. Where did it go? Yeah, Rob MM, reparations question and Trump doom Bernie in 2016 and 2020. That's another good point as well. I also thought it was a mistake for Bernie Sanders not to have a reparations plan. I've been vocal about that. Saul said it was a weaker campaign. I'm for retiring Bernie. Yeah, like that was the same impression that I got, you know? But I think that Kim has a point here, that focus kind of shifted. We saw this last year where we had marches for Medicare for all in this country, and some of the same people who were like these Bernie supporters and they had these big platforms for independent media, they didn't even mention it. They were more concerned about, it was like, let's get Nina Turner in Congress. They were more focused on that instead of fighting for Medicare for all. All of a sudden, that wasn't important anymore because it wasn't attached to a presidential campaign. And then we watched people in this space go from Medicare for all to access. Now that it's an election year again, now all of a sudden we're back to Medicare for all. So I do agree with Kim that I feel like the issues, it changed. Like the focus just shifted, it seems like. I think I have a super chat here from Colin. I do. Thanks so much for the super chat, Colin. When Bernie dropped out, he went on Trump derangement mode. It also didn't help that Jayapal told Bernie to drop out without getting tangibles from Biden in exchange for his support. Bad campaign advice. And lo and behold, look whose name is mentioned, Pramila Jayapal. Why am I not surprised? Why am I not surprised? Thank you so much for the super chat, Colin. You see what I mean? Let's go back in. Let's listen to more of this. This is really interesting.
Why do you think that idea that Bernie became too woke, those aren't the words you used, but that's an argument that people put out there a lot for the difference between 2016 and 2020. And I do think that there was a difference there, but it was less that Bernie said anything especially woke. People have a hard time pointing to examples when I press them on what Bernie did or what he weighed in on that they thought he shouldn't have weighed in on. But I think you're right to identify that there was less of an emphasis on some of the core economic issues and less fire from Bernie in his approach to Joe Biden as someone like Hillary Clinton, who he seemed to have some like genuine antipathy for, something that many Americans felt. And he was much more willing to say she is corrupt. She takes corporate money. She is bought and sold in a way that he refused to say about Joe Biden, who he kept characterizing as his friend. And there was that famous moment on the campaign where Zephyr Teachout, who was a surrogate, had a campaign-approved article that was published in The Guardian, and the campaign wouldn't stand by it, withdrew it, and said that they don't believe that Joe Biden is corrupt. And that unwillingness to really attack power in that way is what made the effort seem more neutered in 2020.
Right, there was that.
So I just want to chime in here, but not just the fact of Bernie Sanders not wanting to call out Joe Biden for corruption, but hell, he wasn't willing to call out anyone on that stage for corruption. Everybody on that stage that was running against Bernie Sanders, I said running against Bernie Sanders, but that was running for the Democratic Party for the primaries, all of them were corrupt. There were so many things. Like, listen, my husband and I, we watched every single one of those debates. And every time we would come up with like, mention this about Kamala, say this about Pete. Why aren't you bringing up, Joe Biden's history with the crime bill? Like, why aren't you bringing these things up? There were so many things that Bernie could have used against the people on that stage. I told you guys about Amy Klobuchar, how she's heavily funded by the police state. In fact, she's number 2 when it comes to senators in DC for police funding. She's number 2. Now, everybody want to point fingers and blame, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. I told you guys before, I think they're just rotating villains. It is what it is. But How come nobody's pointing fingers at Amy Klobuchar for taking all this money from the police? These are things I want people to really think about. Why didn't he call those people out? Yes, it's easy to call out Trump's corruption because that's the person that's the current sitting president that you were running against. But all those people on that stage for those debates with Bernie Sanders, why didn't he call out their corruption? Joe Biden was an easy target, an easy target. There's so many things he could have said about Joe Biden. He chose not to until the final debate when it was just him and Biden. And even then, I said this before, he was soft on Joe Biden during that debate. He could have really went in on him, really went in. And it was at that point where I felt like Bernie wasn't trying. I said, Bernie ain't trying to win this at that debate. I was like, Bernie's not trying to win. Chances are someone had already spoken to him. I wouldn't be surprised if Obama had already spoken to him before that debate and said, hey, Bernie, let Joe have this one. Let Joe have this one. All these backroom deals, you guys. It's the same reason why I believe why AOC and the rest of the squad, none of them have tweeted about any kind of support for Nina Turner. Why? Why? Not saying they should. I'm suspect about Nina too. I told you, none of these people are going to change anything. You know why? Because I guarantee you, the Democratic Party already spoke to them and told them not to, and told them the party is going with Shontel Brown. These people are handpicked. They're handpicked. This is why nothing ever changed. This is why things don't change. So this is my thing. What I'm saying is this. Bernie Sanders had every opportunity to really destroy the candidates on that stage, especially someone like Kamala Harris. Bernie knew what he was doing. He knew not to do that because he knew then he'd be ostracized by the Democratic Party. It's the same reason why after Hillary Clinton won, he went out and helped campaign for Hillary Clinton, traveled across this country to try to help get her elected. And Hillary Clinton stabbed him in the back and went onto the View and said he was part of the reason why she lost. She's still saying that to this day, by the way. She is still saying that to this day. Why did Bernie Sanders do that? After you already lost, why didn't you call out Hillary Clinton for all of her corruption? At that point, what did you have to lose? Same thing with Joe Biden. Here we go, 2020. He do the same thing again, and he tells everybody, well, you guys need to go ahead and vote for Joe Biden because we got to get Trump out. You don't build a movement and then tell people to just settle for the scraps that's left. And that's exactly what he did. Why did he do that? Because this was already decided, guys. It was already done. The party decides who they want in, and that's how it goes. And if you're not the one that they want in, they're going to do everything they can to push you out. They're going to do everything they can to smear you. And if you're still leading in the polls, then they're going to come to you and tell you, look, we're going with Joe. We're going with Hillary. Now you either with us or you out. Just multiple things. I see a lot of people still defending Bernie Sanders. Someone on Twitter just called Bernie Sanders a prophet. This is how far gone some people are. So as far as I'm concerned, I just want people to wake up and see what's really going on here. Let's go back into the video.
Plus, I just kept hearing him say, and we're not going to vote for racism and sexism and bigotry. And, I just kept hearing those words over and over and over.
In 2016, that was like
I don't think he did nearly as much.
No, he didn't nearly as much. He said that predominantly during the 2020 campaign when he was running against Trump. That Bernie used that a lot. I know. I watched all the Bernie speeches. I saw all the rallies. I was at the rally here in Boston. That's what he did. He focused more so on Orange Man Bad, like Colin said, that derangement syndrome. Thanks so much for the super chat, The Traveler. I'm so tired of hearing the word access. Last year, Obama and Cortez only mentioned Medicare for all once or twice. Jayapal introed Medicare for all and then radio silence, 100%. Delthea Simmons said Bernie is done. The policies outlined on his Senate page are still relevant. Bernie, not so much. Well said, Delthea. Well said. All right, let me go back in.
All right.
No, because he wasn't running against Trump, really. In that, in this last election, everybody was just trying to beat Trump. But in 2016, he was going up against Hillary Clinton. So he was talking about corruption and more of the things you just pointed out. But in 2020, it shifted and it was like racism and sexism and bigotry. And it was just over the top. And I was like, come on, let's focus on the actual bread and butter issues.
It also doesn't.
He should have just focused. Not just focused, but he should have went right back to that same strategy he had for 2016, where focusing, like she said, the bread and butter. You should have been focusing more so on the money, because see, that rhetoric didn't work the way that people thought it would work. Like the whole oh, well, he's racist, he's sexist, so we can't have him in there. That didn't really work the way that people thought it would. And same thing, I thought we would have learned this from Hillary Clinton when she played that commercial. And it was a child sitting in front of a TV, and it was a Hillary Clinton ad. And they were like, this is what your children see when Donald Trump is speaking. Would you like for this to be the president of the United States? Would you like your kids to see this kind of rhetoric from the president? It didn't work, did it? No, it didn't work. Just something to think about. Just something to think about. Thank you so much for the super chat, The Traveler. Hillary literally bought out the DNC in 2015, and she had complete control over the finances way before a single vote was cast. Thank you. And that is something that Bernie Sanders should have mentioned. Why didn't he do that? See what I mean? You see what I mean? He know how to play the game. He know how to play the game.
I don't think it doesn't matter hugely if Bernie or someone else tries to run in 2024. I mean, I think Biden is going to be the Democratic Party's nominee 2024 with like a 99.9% guarantee.
I don't know.
And I mean, if his approval ratings get below like 10%, maybe then, but he just has so much institutional backing. A successful primarying of a sitting president seems just totally beyond any. Yeah, he would have to. Biden, I guess, would have to decide that. But Biden's absolutely not going to decide not to run.
I think that would be the scenario.
No one decides
that Joe Biden decides not to run.
No one who has power decides, sure, here's my power. I'm going to set it aside and yield. That is even more unthinkable.
Well, there is conversation. There's quite a bit of patter about that being the eventuality, and that there's an effort to minimize the risk of what that means for the Democratic Party by basically selecting and inaugurating a successor the same way that they've basically chosen successors in a lot of other contexts. And the names on the table are Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar that they still want to make happen.
I expect there will be this feud between Klobuchar and Buttigieg and Harris, and then whoever is the progressive standard bearer. But that's
Harris is
going to
out.
be down the
Nobody's
road.
gonna, she's already. No one's gonna. I mean, they tried forcing Harris on us. I mean, that's what they've been doing, and people.
Yes. Can we please stop trying to make Kamala Harris happen? Please, just stop.
Just are not taking to her, so she's out. I don't know
her
what
own
they're going to do with her.
I don't want her to do it, but that really raises the question: is there going to be a sincere progressive that seems genuine and can capture some of that Bernie magic
energy,
who participates in that open field? If there is an
no, I can answer this question right now. No, there's no one left. You can't rely on Pramila Jayapal. She's sneaky and corrupt. You definitely can't rely on Ro Khanna. He's sneaky and corrupt. I think we know this is kind of it for Nina Turner. No. Who's left? Who's left? I have to tell you, someone called in to my call-in show Saturday night, and they told me they had just recently watched a live stream with Bernie Sanders. And they said, Sabby, it was so sad. And I was like, why? And he said, because the energy is just gone. It's just not there anymore. He said, people aren't energized. They're not excited. It was just so sad to watch. He said, I guess there weren't many people watching too. I don't know. But no, there is nobody. Listen, the kind of movement that Bernie started, and I would say this really came off of the Occupy movement, right? The whole we're the 99% thing. the movement that he started, he got a lot of people riled up. He got a lot of people like, yeah, we can do this. Yeah, let's fight back against corruption, against greed. There were 10,000 people here at the Boston rally for Bernie Sanders when I went to see him. Over 10,000 people. Bernie Sanders really spoke to a lot of people in this country. Working class, poor class, a lot of college students, younger people. A lot of people. And when Bernie Sanders suspended his campaign in 2020 and left his movement, a lot of that energy died. Some people aren't even calling themselves leftist or progressive anymore. They're like, screw this, I'm just done altogether. Some people just like, just screw it. Why try? That's what they say. Why try? Right? How do you get that energy back with another person after we just went through that in 2016 and 2020? People don't want to be let down again. People don't want to be tossed aside again. We don't want to try to do this again only to be disappointed in the end. Because a real movement wouldn't have just been done through electoral politics. The movement would still continue. Imagine if the civil rights movement was done through electoral politics. Imagine. So it's just not, there's nobody. It would take a lot to really get people that excited and enthused again. It's done. I'll go back in.
Open field, and there was no progressive who was able to pick up the Bernie mantle. That'll be an incredible indictment on the state of the movement, and frankly might lend a lot of folks who might think Bernie's time has passed to be willing to give him a second look.
Yeah, I already think the movement has. I don't think that there is. I think if there is somebody that comes through with that Bernie-like magic in the future, it won't be coming from the progressive base. It'll come from somewhere else. You know, and
in this part, I want everyone to pay very close attention to what Kim says, because this is something that I've been saying as well. That type of energy that comes back again, I don't think it's going to be on the left. This is what I was trying to warn people about. I think that type of energy is going to come from the right. Watch. And if they're smart about it, they're going to use some of the same talking points that Bernie Sanders used about the class issue and get people around. Watch. Listen to this.
Possibly it would come from the right this next time. And that energy and that magic was about the middle class, focusing on the middle class, building the middle class. It's dwindling, and it's getting worse and worse and worse as we've seen inflation rise, the wealth trickling up to the richest, and the middle class dwindling more into poverty. So somebody that can capture that magic is going to be that person that can actually speak to that middle class. And I just don't think that's the progressive base anymore.
And I think that and mark my words on this. And if that happens on the right, you know what I think? I think they'll actually win. I think they could actually win with that message. Let's remember when Trump ran in 2016, what did he do? He attacked Republicans on the stage. He attacked all of them. Jeb Bush, Ted Cruz. He went after all of them. He said, we need to drain the swamp. Remember that? He said the people in DC were corrupt. Those people that were like these hardcore, like Trump supporters, they're still here. I told you I used to live in a red state. I know they're still here. People think I'm joking. But the next time we see that type of energy and movement, it'll probably be on the right, and they might win with it. Whereas we could have had that opportunity as well, but we didn't have people in the Democratic Party willing to work together to get someone in like Bernie Sanders. They turned on their own candidates. That's the DNC for you. They turned on their own candidates. But on the right, they come together. That's a big difference. That's a big difference. People weren't, some of them, you know, in the GOP weren't too crazy about Trump in the beginning. But when they saw that's what people on the right wanted, they said, screw this, let's go with it. Let's roll with it. Let's roll. They weren't on the left. The DNC was not willing to do that with Bernie Sanders. Not willing to do that with Bernie Sanders. Hell, the freaking liberal media was smearing Bernie Sanders. See what I'm saying? Going back in. I try to warn people. Watch come 2024. Don't be surprised. Don't be surprised.
Damning indictment. Yeah, again, for 2024, it's going to be, the president is going to be Biden or Trump or DeSantis, I think.
And what happens to everybody who did have an appetite for progressive politics? Like, I don't know that I agree with you, Kim, that the energy is going to come from the right, because I think there is just as much, frankly, more bad faith and corruption coming out of the generator of up-and-coming right-wing talent. I can't imagine, frankly, who it would be. But the reality is the people haven't changed. The people who wanted more out of their politicians and saw Bernie as someone who was unbossed and unbothered, someone who is actually literally free from corporate corruption because he wasn't taking those big dollar monies and everyone else. Remember, Joe Biden took more money from billionaires than anyone else in the race, something that got erased from the terrain in the conversation about why he isn't able to pass anything at this point in time. Those people are still there. And in fact, they're in worse straits, more economically stressed, living with inflation and a bigger gap between their incomes and inflation that they were back in 2016. And every stat that Bernie used to recite from the podium.
I think what Bree's leaving out here again is the money. Like, she has a point when she says, like, those people are still there, people who still want to fight, for these issues. In some ways, I mean, we're kind of divided on the left now. I saw people get divided over mandates. I saw people get divided over imperialism. Now, all of a sudden, some people on the left are pro-war for whatever reason. So we're kind of divided on the left. But the thing is like, we got to go back to the money. Like, I'm sorry, but this is why, like, these kind of issues, putting these progressives through the Democratic Party, the reason why it does not work is because the party is controlled by Wall Street. That's why you don't see the squad pushing and fighting for these issues like they said that they would. I just told you earlier, hell, the squad didn't even issue any kind of support for Nina Turner. What'd that tell you? You guys see what's going on? The Progressive Caucus supported Shontel Brown. What? And she's the corporate. So the money controls it all. The money controls it all. They've already told them this is who we want and this is what's going to happen. So, yes, I do understand that some people still, want to do that. Some people still do want to, like, put these progressives through. But my question is, why are people pretending like the money is not an issue? The reason why they're not accomplishing anything, they're not getting anything done here, is because of the money. The party is controlled. Okay, they get in, they go into Congress, they go into the House, right? Okay, great. But the Speaker of the House is Nancy Pelosi, and she loves to take corporate money. You see the problems you're going to keep running into? This is the problem. This is why nothing we can keep playing this game for the next 4 years and another 4 years, and we're going to keep running into the same issue. They're already picked the people that they want. This is why, like, and don't get me wrong, I don't think Nina Turner is going to be any better either. I've been very honest about this. Again, the party is controlled by Wall Street. Both parties are controlled by Wall Street. That is who decides what happens. They support their donors. So I don't know why people keep looking at this as it's the person that ran that is the issue. We need to get a different person. Oh, we just need to get... It doesn't matter who you put in to those two parties. They're not going to go in there and really change anything. And if they try to, they're going to push them out. That's why you don't see Cynthia McKinney. That's why you don't see Ralph Nader. That's why you don't see Dennis Kucinich. Let me go back in.
About 68,000 people dying a year from a lack of health insurance, and on and on and on, has only been exacerbated over the course of this crisis. And those people are hungering for somewhere to go. And I hope somebody steps up to meet the moment.
But the perception, to Kim's point.
But why do you have to go to a party? Like, why do you have... So I think that we have been conditioned to think we have to belong to a group. You have to be a Democrat. You have to be a Republican. You got to be a leftist. You got to be a progressive. And progressive and leftist candidates are still running through the Democratic Party, by the way. So at the end of the day, they're still Democrats. Just want to put that out there. Why do you have to belong to a group? Why do you have to belong to a party, though? This is something Roger Meadows talks about often, or at least via chat. The parties are a big part of the problem. We would be better off without political parties. My question is, why can't we get this same type of energy and the same type of momentum to support people who are independent and people who are third-party candidates? Why are we still trying to put people into this two-party system that is already bought and paid for? That's the thing. Nobody want to talk about the money. Come on now. Come on. The party's got to go. Bill Bradley said, yes, ban all parties. All parties, even third parties, are private corporations gatekeeping public office. Like, why do we have to do this? Why? Nothing has changed. Nothing has improved. The squad isn't doing anything. Bernie Sanders is not doing anything. They're just going to go along with what the party wants. For example, right now, who do they want? They want Shontel Brown. That's who everybody going along with. That includes the progressives. That's how it works. They already chose people. I told you guys a couple weeks ago, they already had decided that Ro Khanna, they wanted him to run. He's already selected. So look out for him for 2028. That's how it works.
Point is that the left is just going to serve them up more anti-racism training to deal with those
It's just
things.
all about racism and white supremacy.
I'm sorry.
At this
The
point.
idea that Bernie Sanders from the podium
No,
in
not
2020 was doing anti-racism.
Absolutely not Bernie Sanders, but whoever is going to replace Bernie Sanders as the standard bearer for the left is going to face enormous pressure from progressive activists, from the people who care about this
like
stuff,
AOC.
to only focus on...
If they're doing anti-racism training, if they're doing woke speak, they're fundamentally not leftists to begin with. So I'm not even thinking of people who are in that realm. Obviously, we're talking about someone who is a Bernie-style candidate, and I agree with you that there aren't very many names on the horizon. I mean, I do think that there was something provocative about the conversation around Marianne Williamson, because she was this outsider candidate that did pique a lot of people's interest. She was the most Googled person on that second debate night stage, and she was very quickly kind of disposed with after that. It seemed like there was some concern about how much interest there was, if their backlash against her was any indication. But whether or not she can capture, to Kim's point, that grassroots middle-class energy and speak to the needs of the populace in this moment is, who knows if she'll run, and that remains to be seen.
No. And this is where I'm sorry. So look, with all due respect, Marianne Williamson has been on here twice. I think Marianne Williamson does a lot in reference to, humanitarian. She does a lot in reference to nonprofit. She does a lot, right? I think the two problems that Marianne Williamson is going to have is the class issue, and number two, foreign policy. Because let's be real, let's start with class issue first. She's rich. I'm sorry, but that's going to be an issue. That's going to be an issue. In reference to foreign policy, her takes on foreign policy have not been good. Especially, I don't know if you guys have seen it on Twitter, but especially on Twitter, have not been good. And people have tried to explain to her, like, why what is happening between Israel and Palestine is bad. People have tried to explain that to Marianne. People have tried to explain to her, like, well, no, Marianne, like, they're really not going over there to help the women and the children. This is about resources. Imperialism is also bad. And like, that's going to be an issue. I'm just being real with you. But LPA Film said she did pique my interest before she revealed herself to be a Democratic Pied Piper. Yeah, it just, don't get me wrong. Like, the first time Marianne Williamson came on, she came on to talk about reparations, because she had a reparations plan. And I wanted to talk to her about that. So she came on and talked about that. And we talked about the education system as well. And then she came on again for the Women's Summit. But I'm just going to tell you right now, those two issues that I just brought up is going to be a problem. I don't think that Marianne will bring that kind of energy that Bernie Sanders did. I think the class thing is going to be a problem. I'm just being honest with you. So, nah, but I'm no.
But again, to Kim's point, the clear, to me, progressive, or once progressive, once part of the Bernie coalition figure, now generating tons of right-wing and Republican appreciation and actually more welcome in Republican circles is, you know who I'm going to say?
Gabbard.
Tulsi Gabbard. So
Right.
that's,
Right.
I think she might actually be the future. I mean, it's exactly what you were saying, Kim. She's going to capture some of that attention, possibly.
I don't know. I don't know about Tulsi either. Tulsi goes back and forth with people. Like 1 minute she'll say something that's 100% right on the mark. And then the next thing you know, she'll say something you're like, what the hell are you talking about? So it just, I don't know. I don't know. I think they're trying to make something happen that's just not going to happen. It's just not going to work. LPA Film said actual working class people need to lead the party. Thank you, LPA Film. Thank you. Yes. I think that's I'm telling you guys, the class thing is going to be an issue, especially after the pandemic, because more people are in more dire straits now than they were back, when Bernie announced that he was running for 2020. So just something to think about. Something else I want to tell you about why political change doesn't really happen for people who are poor and people who are working class and middle class. There was a study that was done at Princeton University. This was years ago. I've talked about it before on the show, but I never actually showed you the graph. So tonight I'm going to show you that graph. I want to show you this. Now, this was a Princeton study. Poor and middle class have no say in government policy. Now, I'm going to make this a little bit larger for the people in the back. One man, one vote is a fundamental tenet of representative democracy. But according to a new book by Princeton politics professor Martin Gillens, poor and low-income Americans might not have much of a vote at all. The name of this book is Affluence and Influence, Economic Inequality and Political Power in America. Gillens argues that America's top earners are the only people whose opinions have any influence on policy. Let me show you this chart in just a second. You guys see why I keep telling you need to focus on the money? Because that's what it comes all back to. It comes all back to the money. So look at this chart. Let me go down here a little bit. Whee! Okay. This is the predicted probability of policy change. We have two graphs here. One graph is for low income. That's the one here on the right. Excuse me, the left. The one here on the right is for middle income. Let's look at the first graph. Again, this is talking about probability of policy change. If you look at the first graph, low income is the green line, high income is the red line. Whoopity-boop. Notice when it comes to policy change, for people who are lower income, there's a straight line. Nothing changes. For people who are higher income, boop, they have a higher probability of actually getting some type of policy change. This is important to know. Let's look at the second chart. I feel like I'm teaching class right now. Sorry, guys. All right, this is for people who are middle income. The middle income line is dark blue. The high income line, again, is red. Notice, even for people who are middle income, when it comes to policy changed, there's a straight line. There's no change. But for people who are high income, they have a greater probability of policy change. Ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly why I want you to focus on the class issue. As you can see, Gillen's found that the percentage of middle class or lower income people who support a particular policy has virtually no bearing on that policy's likelihood of being enacted. Let's break it down, folks. Let's highlight this. I feel like I'm at the whiteboard now. Here we go again. As you can see, Gillen's found that the percentage of middle class or lower income people who support a particular policy has virtually no bearing on that policy's likelihood of being enacted. That's a good point, Monarch. That's a good point. I'm going to go back in and I'll show you guys that. Marnot just told me, he said, if you look at the middle income, it actually looks like it's tilting down a little bit. Yeah, you're right. So basically, guys, when I talk about the class issue, if we're low income, middle income, long story short, the politicians don't do anything for us. The policy changes affect people who are higher income. Everybody needs to see this. This is why I keep telling you, you think we don't get anything. When it comes to people who are poor, middle class, for the most part, we get nothing. Time to look at that poll, ladies and gentlemen. The results are, so who do you agree with about the Bernie movement? 44% said Briahna Joy Gray, 56% said Kim Iversen. So there you go. There you go.